words about David Livingstone and make it original. Victorian Britain's greatest explorer. Dr. David Livingstone, born in poverty in Scotland, combining working in a mill with his school lessons, rose to become one of Victorian England's greatest explorers. This self-educated man of God was destined to become, cliché. Come on, Charlotte, you know why they asked you to do this. You're the only girl on the newspaper, a simple job, and they're sure to double-check anything I write and find something wrong. And God forbid if I put in any of my own opinions. So what do I know? Dr. David Livingstone, missionary turned explorer, rags to riches. He crossed Africa twice, got lost, got found by Henry Stanley, died out there, part buried in Africa, and finally his body was brought back to be buried in Westminster Abbey. But why did he do it? Was it divine inspiration? Expansion of the empire? To exploit Africa? No, Charlotte, they will not let you ask that. But who was with him? It wasn't a solo expedition. He sure to have had lots of local help, uncredited of course. Oh, and a wife. Yes, he had a wife, daughter of a missionary, already out there. Now she would have been very handy. It is 100 years since his birth in 1813, and we are celebrating his centenary by remembering that this great man once graced us with his presence, right here in Hadley Green Road, taking a simple cottage to find the peace and quiet that he required to finish his missionary travels. Must check the title. A book that was to make his name and seal his place in history. But it couldn't have been that quiet if his family were with him. Were they there? Another thing I need to check. Maps, I'm sure. I need to find some maps. I need to find some images. Oh, there was that illustration of the lion attack. I remember my father used to talk to me about that. Now, Charlotte, get this right, and hopefully they will let me take the photographs. And I know I'm going to do a good job because I've got the best camera. Oh, I better get off to that council meeting and try not to fall asleep while the mayor is talking.
Oh, Henry, here you are. I've been looking for you.
Good news, Madeline.
Put that away. They could be here any minute. We need to be ready.
Here? Here?
Oh, Henry, you do make me cross sometimes. My sister and nephew arrived today. I told you they shipped docked in Southampton 2 days ago. And surely I've talked of little else but their endless journey back from southern Africa.
Well, I've been busy, my dear. I've just been invited to be chairman of the committee for all the events to commemorate the birth of David Livingstone. He lived here. Well, on Hadley Green Road, anyway. David Livingstone, my dear. Victorian England's greatest explorer.
Yes, Henry, I know who he is, dear. Everybody does. And that he stayed across the green for a short while. But just now I am more concerned with my sister, Isabel, and young Philip. Oh, poor Isabel. To lose her husband and young daughter so suddenly to fever, I really cannot imagine.
Yes,
Then
terrible.
to be out there all alone to arrange the funerals, and that endless wait for passage back to England. She must have been desperate to get home with Philip.
It was awful. I said to Richard before he left, no place to take a woman and children. Don't know why he took them to Africa.
Well, they wanted to be together as a family while Richard was working for the company.
Well, they're a smaller family now.
Henry, What a tactless thing to say. I do hope you won't say anything like that while they're here.
No, of course not. It was just a comment. Do you think she'll still be maudling?
It's been less than a year. I dare say if I were to die, or one of our children, you should recover yourself very quickly.
No, of course not. I was just wondering about the boy.
Philip, our nephew?
Should have gone to boarding school. Well, I've checked. He can go up and join ours as soon as he likes. He's only missed 1 year.
I'm not sure Isabel will like that. The children had a governess before. She isn't keen on boarding schools, especially for boys.
Poor nonsense. Be the making of him.
Well, maybe just don't mention it straight away.
Very well. But I shall have to talk to him about Richard's will. It's most extraordinary. I mean, he has left everything to her, a trust for the boy, but she has been made sole executor to make all the decisions about what is a considerable sum of money. Richard can't have intended that.
But if that was in his will, and he spoke to Robertson, the solicitor.
My dear Madeline, Richard, like most men, didn't expect to actually die. If he did, he would have appointed Robertson and probably me to be executors. Let us make the decisions.
I'm sure they were all quite happy with their arrangements. Anyway, what a horrid subject. Another thing you must not mention. Oh, where are they? Come now, Henry, you must distract me. Tell me about this committee then.
Well, there are to be a series of events. There's even talk of a memorial stone.
A stone? Where?
On the cottage. You know, the ones all the locals call Livingstone Cottage. There, I presume. I presume. Do you know that Livingstone was lost in the most extraordinary...
Do you wonder how I can help poor Isabel to distract herself? She always had such novel ideas, always reading and discussing things with Richard. You know, in one of her letters she told me we must stop wearing ostrich feathers in our hats. Said there will be no birds left if we don't.
Oh, Lord, I'd forgotten about her ideas. Another reason why she should be distant from her finances. We don't know giving away everything to some crackpot cause. Another thing I shouldn't mention. Well, I certainly picked the right sister.
The right sister?
Well, she is the older and convention would have dictated that. But that made no difference to me, Isabel. It was you, my dear Madeline, from the moment I met you. You were the better one.
It's all right, Henry. I'm not cross. And you're right, I was a good choice. Isabel is far too sharp for you. She would have had the better of you in no time. I'm too apt to give way. Though, with Isabel back, perhaps I shall start to fight my own corner more.
And she has to stay here?
Only while her house is to be got ready.
And what does my mother have to say about that?
No, Henry, I really cannot say what Caroline thinks. She was very quiet when news came of Richard and young Elizabeth's deaths. It seemed to quite upset her.
Yes, as well it might. I mean, she is a widow too, and there were several brothers and sisters lost before I was born. But only Nicholas and I made it, as they say.
Again, so tactless. Your poor mother. I was vaguely aware, but she's not a woman to share confidences.
No, indeed. No, indeed. Still, that was all a long time ago, and at least she has me, and Nicholas.
Madam, sir, they've arrived. Coming in the door, all the way from Africa. Shall they be brought in here?
Yes, straight away, please, Etta.
They won't have brought back a tiger, will they?
Tigers are in India. I think you mean a lion, Etta? And no, they will not have brought any wild animals back with them.
Ah, I'll show them in.
The boy might have brought a snake back or two, don't you think?
Isabel! My dear Belle, I cannot believe it's really you. We've been so worried, haven't we, Henry?
Oh, Maddie, I'm so glad to see you, to be home. I thought the journey would never end.
My dear boy, how nice to see you. My dear nephew, how you've grown.
Yes, dear.
Hasn't he grown?
Philip has grown. I've had a great many adventures too, I'm sure. Your Uncle Henry will be most disappointed if you haven't brought back a snake with you.
Oh, Lord!
No snakes, Uncle Henry. At least no live ones. I do have some snake skins, though.
Oh, have you? Well, let's see some. Let me see the
Isabel,
snakeskin.
come sit down. Etta will bring tea. Oh, Elizabeth, Richard.
Oh, Mother, you must come and meet our guests. You remember Isabel, Madeline's sister, Richard Harrington's wife, now widow, and their son,
Philip.
Philip.
My dear Mrs. Harrington, you must be quite exhausted. Such a long journey. Now, Mrs. Penman, when I'm quite rested, I will tell you all about our travels. You remember our son Philip?
Now, this young man, surely not. You must be 23?
No, Mrs. Penman. I'm only 14. And 3/4.
Oh, well, that will make all the difference. Your Uncle Henry was not nearly as tall and broad as you are at 14 3/4, not at all.
No, Mother, I'm not sure that's quite true.
Madeline, why don't you go and help Netta with the tea things? She's telling the other servants there are snakes and spiders in the luggage.
Oh, that Etta.
And Henry, go and help. And Philip, go and help with the luggage. Sit with me, Mrs. Harrington. I understand you lost your husband and daughter in Africa. 9, was she? Fever.
Yes, both Richard and our daughter Elizabeth had a fever. They never told us which kind. They were rushed away. Elizabeth was 9 years old. It was 11 months ago. 11 months and 4 days.
The anniversary will be hard. I remember the deaths of all my children, of course.
Oh, Mrs. Penman.
Oh, it was not uncommon. But I did seem to be particularly unlucky. 3 girls and 2 boys. Not 9, barely 6 months. And not fever. Something else they would never tell me. You must speak of it. You must not be told to forget they existed.
I couldn't not speak of it. Sometimes it's all I want to do.
Mama, I'm here. You're tired. You can lean on me. And here, I have a clean handkerchief somewhere.
Well, I've just been talking to the boy about school. Keen to get away to boarding school, aren't you, my boy?
I don't think I would like to leave my mother just yet, sir.
Nonsense, for the making of you. Your father would have wished it.
Henry? Let us wait until Philip and Isabel are at least unpacked before there's any talk of either of them leaving again. Such haste could almost be considered rude.
Yours, madam. Have you read all of them?
Not all yet. Feel free to borrow any you like.
Borrow, madam? Oh no. I could barely read the headline of a newspaper.
Well, if you change your mind, there are some leaflets there you might find interesting.
I do hope you're not trying to influence our staff, Isabel. Henry would be most disapproving.
Has he ever approved of me?
You look better today. Do you feel it? These last 2 weeks you seemed so lost. But today you look and sound more like your old self.
I am trying to be my old self. I promised Philip I would. It was such a wrench to leave Africa, but this is our home now. We must begin again. So I need to talk to Henry about some decisions I've made.
Etta, could you ask Captain Penman to come in here?
Yes, madam. I heard Master Harrington and Captain Penman talking in the study about snakes. I shall only put my head round the door.
I'm glad you're feeling more like yourself. So what are all these pamphlets and books then, Isabel? I read the one you sent about not using ostrich feathers in our hats, and the other one about suffrage. I had to hide that one from Henry.
Hide it? Does Henry not support votes for women? I shall have to work on it. Richard was always so supportive of the cause. Oh, this, Freud, psychoanalysis. Amazing what the human mind can do, Maddie. He talks about dreams and wish fulfillment, that our mind, if we want something very much, we think we see it. And this from the Fabian Society. I shall write you up a reading list.
I shall look forward to that. And in return, will you come with me on a visit and meet the people of Hadley Green? They so want to meet you and pay their respect.
Do you think some gossip might cheer me up? Anything interesting? Anything that might shock me?
There is nothing that would shock you, Isabel. But it might interest you to know that a journalist from the Finchley Gazette has opened up a photographic studio on the High Street, and she is a woman. Oh. Of course, there are all sorts of rumours flying around about her, and I did hear that Major Wallace was chased out of the door when he inquired after Parisian images.
Oh, well, we will have to support this enterprise. Perhaps I should commission her to take a portrait of Philip.
Well, he is causing quite a stir. Her name is Charlotte Paxton. Isabel, the gramophone, you didn't bring it all the way back on the ship?
Of course I did. Music is such a comfort to me. Richard and I had so many gramophone records we loved to play.
And some old favourites too. What was that one that Father always used to play?
For a country vicar, he had some quite risque tastes. That music hall song.
The Boy I Love. And was that one that Richard used to play over and over?
Oh, Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, his favourite, mine too. I must confess it does remind me of him.
But doesn't it make you sad?
Sometimes, but I feel close to him. You must tell me if I'm playing it too much, trying to conjure him up. Maybe we could have a séance.
What do you mean? Don't say things like that, Belle. You shall make me worry terribly. Stick to music and have Charlotte Paxton take a nice, happy photograph of you and Philip.
Charlotte Paxton? You're not talking about that reporter photographic person, are you? I don't think it's quite proper to associate with her.
Henry, one may have some right to instruct your own wife. Happily, you have no such claim over me. I shall go and see her, and Philip will come with me. What do you think, Philip? Would photography interest you?
Yes, Mamma. Can we really?
Of course, this is our home now. We must find projects and interests to engage us. I must get my brain working, get some ideas.
Yes, you need energy, Mrs. Harrington. Always be doing something.
Oh, please call
You
me...
must tell me your next plans.
Well, please call me Isabel. I insist.
As it happens, I have met the infamous Miss Paxton, and I'm considering asking her to come here and take a portrait of the family.
Charlotte Paxton? Here? But she quite embarrassed Major Wallace.
Oh, he deserved to be embarrassed, silly old goat.
Yes. Well, before all this fun and games, Isabel, if you're feeling better today, perhaps we could discuss Richard's will. There is rather a lot to get through, and rather unconventionally, I see he's left you in sole charge of all undertakings.
Yes, I have his instructions.
My dear Isabel, I'm sure that Richard would have wanted me to assist you with the administration and the investments, and you'll have so much else to do.
To do? What else will I have to do? Walk the high street? Visit people? Perhaps buy some ridiculous hats?
Well, there's helping Philip with the packing before he goes to school, and you'll want to spend some time with him.
Philip, what does he mean, school?
Well, Uncle Henry thinks it's the right thing for a boy my age and standing. That I should get back to the English way of doing things if I want to get on.
But do you want to go away to school, Philip? Is that what you want to do?
Well, I'm not sure. I want to get on, of course, but...
Oh, of course he wants to go. He doesn't want to hang around here with all the old hens.
Why?
I mean, the ladies of Hadley Green and Chipping Barnet.
Why don't we take one thing at a time? Isabel will see to the house and then business, and then we can think about Philip. But it does sound like rather a lot, Isabel.
Well, it is rather a lot. In fact, much more than I thought. So I've made some decisions.
Oh, Lord.
Firstly, we can't possibly stay here. You've been such gracious hosts, but I found a charming cottage on Hadley Green Road. It's the one they call Livingstone Cottage. I've decided to take it for 6 months until my house is ready.
You don't need to leave, does she, Henry?
Well, if she has made up her mind, Madeline, that she will just be across the green, which is handy for visits and so on. Well, Livingstone Cottage, eh? What a coincidence. You know that I've just been made chairman for all the events.
Livingstone Cottage. I would be most interested to see the place, Isabel. When I was first married, I visited there and met the good Dr. Livingstone and his wife and family.
How fascinating. So he wasn't there alone?
Oh, no. There was a wife, Mary, I believe, and their children. They seemed very happy. They made quite a noisy crowd. Of course, Mrs. Livingstone was not quite used to the ways of England, having spent most of her life in Africa so far. In fact, she told me that when they were first married, it was she who was the better known locally, and she paved the way for him, so to speak.
Mother, you never told me about your connection with David Livingstone. This is most fortuitous. I might ask you to join me on the committee for advice.
Oh, dear, no, Henry, I'm not joining one of your committees. Boring men, whittering on, talking themselves up and never listening.
Mother, it's not like that at all. It's very important stuff.
Yes, I'm sure. Isabel, if you want to know more, you should ask Kitty.
Our maid Kitty? Kitty Hallows?
Yes, she was their housekeeper.
But Mother, that was over 50 years ago.
Kitty is very old. Must be 100 at least.
Not quite so old. About the same as me, I believe, and we were both much younger then.
Well, I shall certainly quiz her about
Yes.
the cottage's famous residents.
Isabel, you must take Kitty to be your housekeeper while you're there. Henry, you've often said she needs lighter duties.
Why, Madeline, thank you.
That's a very good idea, I think.
Well, that is my first decision. The second is that I've decided to employ a secretary to assist with the administration of Richard's will and business interests.
That's an excellent idea, Isabel, and I shall help you with that. The clerk of our committee, Edward Blaine, I will ask him to come over and go through things for you.
Thank you, Henry. That's very kind, and I'm sure your man Blaine is a wonderful clerk, but I've quite determined to employ a female secretary. There are a number around now who are very skilled, and I believe the Pitman system of shorthand is very effective, and I shall need organisational skills, a keen mind. Yes, I'm quite certain a female secretary would suit me best. Perhaps your Mr. Blaine could assist in finding such a person. Could you arrange for a few suitable candidates to present themselves for interview?
Well, of course, you could ask him. He's coming this afternoon, isn't he, Henry?
Mama, do you think your secretary could teach me shorthand? I've read about it. It's like a secret code.
My dear Isabel, I'm sure that Richard, had he lived, would have wanted you to place all his affairs into the hands of someone experienced.
Oh, don't worry, Henry. The secretary won't manage my affairs.
Oh, I'm very relieved to hear that.
I shall manage the affairs myself. That is what Richard intended.
Oh, come now, Henry. When and if it all descends into chaos, you can say to Isabel, I told you so. If not, you can eat humble pie.
Appears I'm outnumbered. I will ask Edward Blaine to sort out some suitable ladies for you. He has a sister who can accompany him. That will make sure that everything will be proper.
Thank you, Henry. I should so hate to do anything that wasn't proper. Now, come along, Philip. We have plans to make. Madeline, may I ask you to assist me?
Of course.
Am I correct, Henry, in remembering that at one point you were going to propose to Isabel as the elder sister, as that would have been more proper?
And then I met her.
Indeed. She's far too sharp for you, my dear.
That is what Madeline said.
You're to wait here.
Now, Daisy, you are here to keep everything proper whilst I help Mrs. Harrington take on a female secretary. You should act with due decorum and speak only when spoken to.
How many bedrooms do you think they have, Edward? I bet they don't use them all. Think how many people could live here.
That's exactly what I mean, Daisy. No talk of the homeless or poor working conditions. And certainly no mention of suffrage.
Oh, Teddy, if you were my brother, I swear, I'd be sorely tempted to box your ears.
Daisy, this is important to me. Captain Penman has put a lot of trust in me on this, and we haven't even started the Livingstone committee meetings yet. He might get someone else if he doesn't think I'm any good.
Someone else? You're the best clerk in Chipping Barnet. I know. You always tell me. I won't spoil it for you, Teddy. I promise. What do you want me to do?
First of all, don't call me Teddy. You just stand here next to me and take notes. Write down the skills that each candidate has, their suitability, presentation, demeanour. Take it in shorthand.
I can do that, certainly. You've told me well enough, Teddy. Edward, quick hand, neat notes, properly dated and signed, will that do?
Yes. And no talking.
No talking? But what if I'm asked a question?
No, you won't.
Mr. Blaine, how lovely to meet you. And thank you so much for finding some suitable women for me to meet with today.
Oh, my pleasure, Mrs. Harrington. Captain Penman told me that you should have support and assistance in every way, and I'm happy to provide this.
Support and assistance, I see, in every way.
May I present my sister, Miss Daisy Blaine, who's here to keep everything proper.
Delighted to meet you, Miss Blaine. I feel very proper now. Will you or your sister take notes?
I've asked Daisy on this occasion to help you remember the key features of each candidate so there's no confusion when we come to decide after.
Thank you, Miss Blaine. Perhaps you could sit by me. Mr. Blaine, I believe the First Lady is waiting.
Indeed. Straight to it.
Do you often assist your brother, Miss Blaine?
When I can. I like to help him. He's taught me well ever since we've children.
Mrs. Harrington, this is Miss Shepherd, who has her references here. She has assisted her father in the butcher's shop, sending out accounts. So she is able to read accounts and send them out. She reads the lessons in church when asked and has a neat copper plate. She would make a pleasant companion as well as an adequate secretary for your needs.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Harrington. Is this your sister, Madeleine? Because she don't look like you, does she?
No, Miss Shepherd, this is the sister of Mr. Blaine here. Please sit down, won't you?
Oh, much obliged. Take the weight off.
May I ask a few questions?
Questions? You never said anything about questions, Mr. Blaine.
All quite proper, I assure you, Miss Shepherd.
But you have shorthand, Miss Shepherd. I believe the Pitman system has been learned by many, and organisational skills. Is there a particular system you prefer?
Well, that is not something I am proficient in. No.
And no secretarial skills at all?
Well, not in a formal sort of way, but from what Mr. Blaine says, you don't need much doing, just ticking over until the solicitor and Captain Penman step in.
Ah, indeed.
Captain Penman did say that in time you might find it too much.
I see, how interesting. An important issue for me, Miss Shepherd, is discretion. My husband's papers are private.
Oh, Mrs. Harrington, you will have no worries, I can assure you. Why? I was only just saying to your Retta, you know the servant back there? Well, when she had that bit of bother with her gin, I was as silent as the grave. Until it all came out. Then it was all right to talk about it.
Thank you, Miss Shepherd. Most satisfactory.
Yes, thank you, Miss Shepherd. Lovely to meet you.
Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Harrington. Well, that's all right. Not like what Captain Penman said. I suppose she's quite nice, really.
So, what notes do you have about the redoubtable Miss Shepherd?
Sloppy, indiscreet, talks too much, no evidence of skills, not sure she can read and write to the standard you need. Whatever you think that matters, Mrs. Harrington.
Thank you for your candour, Miss Blaine. I couldn't have put it better myself.
Are you ready to meet the next lady, Mrs. Harrington, or do you need to rest?
I have no need to rest. Miss Blaine and I are quite ready and indeed intrigued to see who
May I introduce Miss Pooley, who has come from a bank where she's been supporting a team of clerks. Her references are excellent and written by the senior clerk himself, who says, Miss Pooley is a model of efficiency. She tackles every task quietly and quickly with no fuss.
Delighted to meet you, Miss Pooley. Please sit down.
A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Mrs. Harrington.
Oh. So you worked in a bank. That must have been interesting.
I couldn't possibly comment on that, Mrs. Harrington. The correspondence and minutes of meetings and so on were confidential, and I'll never break a confidence.
That is good to know. I presume you are proficient in shorthand, bookkeeping and general organisation?
Of course, Mrs. Harrington. I would not have presented myself for interview if that had not been the case.
Of course. May I ask why you left the bank? It was presumably a well-remunerated position, and you're aware this post would likely pay less.
That is a rather delicate matter, Mrs. Harrington. All I will say is that the tone of conversations amongst the clerks was developing in a somewhat unseemly manner. Talk of things that feminine ears should not hear.
Oh. Well, that's a pity you had to leave your employment, Miss Pooley. Was there no one who could talk to the clerks and let them know you were unhappy?
I would never have complained, Mrs. Harrington. No, that is not in my nature. That is not my way. I think it best that you know that I am a woman of strict moral principles. I know a woman working is supposed to be very modern, but as a matter of fact, I do not approve of it.
You don't approve of your own work?
Correct. I do it so that I do not slide into poverty and the many temptations therein. The Lord has seen fit to bestow wealth on others, deserving or not, and I have seen with my own eyes that the poor are, I'm afraid to say, lacking in morals, living cheek by jowl with no decency.
I think the poor live cheek by jowl, as you put it, because they are poor and cannot afford suitable homes, not the other way round. My opinion, of course, Miss Pooley.
Well, I don't hold with opinions. Leads to ideas, then actions.
That is generally what happens. One has an idea, hopefully it leads to action.
Well, I won't take any more of your time, Mrs. Harrington. You have my excellent references and you can see the kind of lady I am. I await your contact. You will escort me to the door, Mr. Blaine? Good day, Mrs. Harrington.
Well, I think I failed the interview with Miss Pooley. What an extraordinary woman. Her ideas were so
Awful, prejudiced, narrow. That type of person makes it difficult to argue for decent homes for workers with a poverty leads to immorality opinions.
I quite agree. A horrible woman with horrible ideas. Quite unsuitable.
Mrs.
Jane,
Harrington,
can I ask you to
suggest?
I wonder if we've both had the same idea. You clearly have the skills I need, and I have no doubt you have a sharp mind. And it appears our views on other matters that mean a great deal to me, align well.
Is it true that you don't wear ostrich feathers in your hats as a protest against their slaughter? My brother told me.
Is that what they're saying about me? Yes, that rumour is true. Do you agree?
Well, yes, I do, but I'm more interested in issues that affect humans, in particular, female humans.
You do not need to speak in code here, Miss Blaine. It is also well known of me that I'm in favour of votes for women, and I will happily argue with anyone who disagrees. I'm not in favour of the recent violence, bombs in postboxes, that sort of thing. No, that will never win the argument. I'm a suffragist, not a suffragette. You're aware of the difference?
Yes, I know the difference, but I'm swayed by Mrs. Pankhurst's motto, deeds, not words. There's already been so much talk.
I'm familiar with the writings of the Fabian Society.
Yes, I've read the reports of the Commission on the Poor Law.
Have you? Well, when I next visit the Webbs, you should accompany me.
The Webbs?
But let us return to the issue in hand. Would you wish to be my secretary? You're aware of the terms.
I would love to, Mrs. Harrington. Thank you.
There will be a lot to go through with my husband's papers. But before we turn to all of that, I would like your first task to be to find out whatever you can about the Livingstones' visit here. There's a great deal of information about him, but I am so curious about her.
I can certainly get on with that straight away. I'll look for the newspapers, the library. Do you know whether there are any paintings or photographs? I've got a friend who can deal with that. But Mrs. Harrington, my brother might be upset if I take this post. The two ladies you saw earlier were more the type of person Captain Penman had in mind.
Don't you worry about Captain Penman or your brother. I know just what to say to them both. Ah, Mr. Blaine, we were just speaking of you. Your sister has been kindly sharing her notes. How clever she is to have mastered Pitman's shorthand. Your influence, no doubt.
Oh, yes, that's. I am proud of Daisy's neat hand and quick note-taking.
She must be such an asset to you.
She is. Mrs. Harrington, the two ladies, do you have any thoughts on which you preferred? They both had strengths and weaknesses, but I'm sure either would make an adequate secretary, at least in the short term.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine, but we're overlooking the obvious choice here, are we not?
Are we? Oh no, Mrs. Harrington, I don't think Captain Penman intended that I should take the role of...
Oh no, Mr. Blaine, I'm sorry, you misunderstand. I meant Miss Blaine. Is she not quite the right person? She has, what did you say, a quick hand and neat note-taking, and she sat here so quietly and demurely. I'm sure we would get on well. Would you allow me to give her a trial in the role? You would be on hand, of course, to give her any support or advice she needs.
Well, what do you think, Daisy? Would you want to take it on?
Well, Teddy, Edward, I believe I could do a good job, and with your supervision, I know I wouldn't let you down.
Oh, Daisy, you'd never let me down. And, I'm sure that if you're comfortable asking questions with anything you don't understand or struggle with, then it might work quite well. But will Captain Penman approve?
The decision is mine, not Captain Penman's. But I feel sure he would be only too happy to have Blaine, brother and sister, working so closely with us.
Blaine, brother and sister, like a family business. Well, we must be getting on. Shall I let Captain Penman know?
Oh, do let me. I would love to tell him how it's all been settled. Goodbye, Miss Blaine. Shall I see you in a few days to start?
I can start tomorrow if you like.
I'm afraid I have the memorial service tomorrow for my husband and daughter.
Of course, Mrs. Harrington. We will be there to pay our respects.
Of course. Goodbye, Mrs. Harrington, and thank you.
Oh, Miss Blaine, do you know Charlotte Paxton?
Oh, why do you ask?
Oh, simply, I want to ask her to take a family portrait, and I wondered if she had any talents as a photographer.
Oh, she's very good, isn't she, Edward?
Oh, she's taken some marvellous pictures of the local people and the area.
And I think you'd like her.
Very well, I shall approach her then. Thank you.
So, Isabel, I saw Blaine leaving. Have you made a choice? Both excellent candidates, don't you think?
Henry, what do you think of Blaine? His character, his accomplishments?
Blaine? He's a good man, the finest. Good clerk, accurate and discreet.
I quite agree, and his sister Daisy is quite as accomplished and was trained by him. She's consented to take the role and starts in a few days.
But, Miss Pony, Miss Shepherd! Service, very moving. Well done.
Thank you. A memorial is a very different service from the funeral rites. I'm still not quite sure why the bodies of Mr. Harrington and their daughter were not brought back here for a Christian burial.
I can assure you, Reverend Perrin, that all due propriety was observed at the funerals of my niece and brother-in-law. My sister was content for them to remain in Africa together, and, as I'm sure you will agree, as they will all meet again at some point. Where their bodies lie now is of little matter.
You are correct on the ecumenical point, Mrs. Perrin. I merely believe that Mrs. Harrington would be greatly comforted by having her husband and child nearby.
She would be better comforted if they had not died.
Hey, come, Madeline, let us greet the others and save your sister from too much exertion.
Harrington, you have a hard road ahead, does she not, sister?
Very hard.
The lot of the widow is a heavy one to bear. You will crumble, you will falter, you will fail, will she not, sister?
Indeed, yes.
Our own dear brother died 5 years ago, and we still wear our mourning colours. Do not be tempted to forsake them after a year, as is the fashion now. No, this is your lot, and you must submit to it.
Thank you for your advice, Miss Framley. I shall certainly remember it.
And my sister advises that you must not be tempted to go out too much, as that is not quite proper.
Indeed, once a month is more than enough, and then only with good reason. Why, if it hadn't been for this memorial service today, we would have been indoors for how long, sister?
7 weeks.
7 weeks? You have not left your home in 7 weeks. Are there not many good causes you could support to be a helpful distraction?
That would be appropriate, I believe, sister.
My brother-in-law, Captain Penman, is always on some committee or another. I'm sure he could suggest a suitable project.
Oh, my father is on the committee to commemorate the birth of Dr. David Livingstone. He is sure to be really busy, and it is such an honour because they're sure to need a stall for pies.
Oh, well, I shall consult Captain Penman. I'm sure our services could be used.
Oh, Madeline, the people. Why are they here and why do they talk to me? Please, let's go inside the church for a few minutes so no one disturbs you.
Holding up, young man. Jolly good.
Oh, Uncle Henry.
Oh, steady. Head up, head up. Don't let your mother see you're upset, or anyone else. You are the man of the house now and need to change your weight.
Yes, Uncle.
Off to school tomorrow, eh? Bet you're looking forward to that. All those games and jakes. Don't want to hang around here with all the old hens. I mean, the ladies of Hadley Green and Chipping Barnet.
My mother is sad that I'm going. She wants me to stay.
No, I told her that you were desperate to go. Keen as mustard. It will give her comfort to know that you are happy.
Yes, sir. I'll try to be happy.
Good show. Ah, Miss Violet, Miss Shepherd, how are you?
So, when is the first meeting? You are all on the committee, yes? I must say I was delighted when Captain Penman asked me to join. Quite the honour for a humble butcher. I'm sure it's not just to get free pies.
No more about the committee, please. Doesn't anyone have any more conversation?
Apparently not. Excuse me, gentlemen. I must circulate.
Yes, on the committee indeed. Captain Penman very keen to have me on board. Happy to help. Beats windier, of course.
Indeed, I am required. There is to be a short sermon when the memorial stone is unveiled.
The first meeting will be held next week. I'll be sending out the agenda then.
Agenda? By Jove, very formal. I'll get my daughter Frida to look it over.
Yes, all the correct protocols will be followed.
Hello, Charlotte.
Daisy, do you know the Harringtons? What a sad service.
Wasn't it? I don't know why Mr. Harrington took his wife and children out to Africa.
What, you think the little woman should have stayed at home?
I think they all should have stayed at home in England, especially the husband. Why do men always seem to cause problems and destruction wherever they go?
Well, you're asking the wrong person there, Daisy. Anyway, if you don't like the Harringtons, why did you come?
Well, I do like her, and as a matter of fact, I'm to start in a few days as Mrs. Harrington's secretary.
What? That is amazing news! And your brother's letting you?
Oh, he's fine with it. Mrs. Harrington wraps him around her little finger. I swear he thinks it was his idea.
What's she like? I've heard about the ostrich feathers, and around here, that makes her out to be a bit of a Bolshevik. But it is something to hire a woman as her secretary. What will you be doing?
Administration of her husband's will. She's the sole executor. I don't think her brother-in-law or the solicitor are very happy about that.
I bet. They'd probably think any woman with money is going to go and squander it on buying hats or even getting swindled out of it.
I'll tell you what she might spend it on. Photography. She asked me whether you're any good.
What? And what did you say?
Oh, Teddy and I said you were dreadful and not to waste her money.
Oh, come on. But did she really ask?
Yes, even Teddy said you were talented.
Really? Should I give her my card?
Maybe not today, but you could help me with something. She wants to know more about when David Livingstone was here.
Oh, not that centenary business.
I'm to be clerk to the official committee.
Oh, I'll make a note of that. Oh, definitely. And do you know the Finchley Gazette said that I'm not suitable to take the photographs? What's she interested in Livingstone for? She's not one of these missionary God and Empire type, is she?
Oh, no. She's interested in Mary Livingstone, the wife. Mrs. Harrington's staying at Livingstone Cottage for a few months and she's interested. Perhaps you can help me find some paintings or photographs?
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, she supports votes for women.
Daisy, you should have started with that piece of information.
Excuse me, Mrs. Harrington, Mrs. Henman, a beautiful service, so moving, so...
Yes, Mr. Robertson.
Well, as your solicitor, there are a number of things I need to discuss. You now possess quite a fortune, and will need advice on how to handle it, all of which I can do for you. And Captain Penman has offered his assistance, so you need not be troubled with any papers.
Need we talk about this now, Mr. Robertson?
No, indeed. If Mrs. Harrington will give her approval, Captain Penman and I can start straight away and handle everything. Would that be your wish? I'm sure it would be best.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson, but I plan to handle my own affairs and will read all the relevant papers myself.
But my dear Isabel, there is no need for that. Robertson and I can manage all that for you.
No, I do not want it to be managed, and I do not wish to be managed. I shall make use of the secretary I hired. She will assist me with all the paperwork.
The plain girl? Oh, no, I'm not sure she's quite suitable at all.
But it is what I want.
Very well, Isabel. We will discuss this another day. Come, Robertson.
This is most irregular, Captain Penman. A lady, a grieving widow, cannot possibly be expected to understand all that needs to be done.
I will have a word with her, make her see sense.
Please see that you do. I am in a difficult position. Legally, she's actually able to do as she wishes with her money, but she cannot think she can be responsible for such a sum.
Quite right. Out of the question.
Get her to delegate to us. You see, my concern is that while she's so recently widowed, she may be influenced to give money to causes, charities and so on, ones that are really not suitable.
She does...
That type of decision, Captain, is best left to you and me.
She had some peculiar ideas, quite modern.
Very worrying. But we will make sure she's kept in pretty hats and dresses and put the bulk of the assets to good use. Her husband was in the mining industry in South Africa, I believe.
Yes, good man. His company made a killing in the mines. There was a spot of local bother, isn't there always? But they dealt with it. It didn't affect the profits, though. Staggering returns. Blaine, with me.
Kitty, I'd like you to take special care of Mrs. Harrington when she moves into the cottage. I am a little worried about her.
Well, of course, madam.
I'm not sure she quite realises how much grief can affect her.
Just so, madam. It is a sad road, but between us we'll see the right.
Yes, Kitty. We old hens, as Henry likes to call us, we'll look after her, won't we?
Philip, we can go to the carriage now. I want to spend every last minute with you before you have to leave tomorrow. Oh, Miss Lane, I thought I saw you here. Thank you for coming.
So sorry to hear about your husband and daughter, Mrs. Harrington. I hadn't realised the circumstances.
Thank you. This is my son, Philip.
Pleased to meet you, Master Philip.
I was hoping that you could teach me shorthand, but I have to go to school.
Perhaps I can show you in the holidays.
Shall we take Philip in the carriage with us?
You won't be long, will you, Mamma?
No, and then we can have tea and some of Kitty's cakes.
Don't tire yourself, my dear.
So now you see why I must occupy myself, keep my thoughts away from all of this. The Mary Livingstone project will be a diversion before we turn to the will and all the paperwork.
Can I introduce you to my friend, Charlotte Paxton?
Not now. Oh, Miss Paxton, the photographer. I've heard a great deal about you. Oh dear. And ignored almost all of it, aside from the reports of your talents.
Charlotte's going to be helping me find photographs of Mary Livingstone.
Oh, indeed. If you find anything, perhaps you could accompany Miss Blaine when she visits.
Thank you, I will.
If you don't mind, I shall just take a moment to myself.
Yes, I shall be looking after Mrs. Harrington in Livingstone Cottage. She needs peace and quiet, and I shall make sure she's comfortable.
Oh, well, we will visit too and pay our respects.
Livingstone Cottage, eh? You know, of course, I've been invited onto the committee.
Oh, we know about that, Father. But what we really want to know about is Mrs. Harrington.
Oh, she is the height of respectability, and you are honoured to keep house for her. I shall, of course, be a frequent caller.
Indeed, Mrs. Harrington is quite a respectable lady. She'll need a bit of cheering up, I'll be bound. Let her know yours truly is available should she want any company.
Is it true that you were the housekeeper at the cottage when Dr. Livingstone stayed there?
I was indeed. Oh, such a group they were. Always something happening. One day a young man came to take a photograph of the family. Well, I thought they'd all be dead the next day, what with that flash and that smell. And that in the very sitting room where Mrs. Harrington is to take her tea.
I'll look into that.
She's such a lovely lady and so very clever. She's always reading and writing. She says I can borrow any of her pamphlets that I like. She's given me this one. Oh, I'll get Etta to read it to me. Well, I must carry on now because she moves in tomorrow.
Oh, come along, Father. We've got chops for lunch.
Perhaps, Frida, we could visit with some pies.
Oh, yes.
Would that be a suitable morning gift?
Oh, yes.
Oh, Madeline, thank God they've all gone. I swear if it weren't for Philip, I would...
Hush, hush. You've been doing so well. It's just the service bringing it all back.
Bringing it all back, it never goes, Maddie. When I look at the house, when I hear a piece of music, when I see Philip, you all think I'm doing so well, but I just want to scream and cry.
Perhaps you should not move into the cottage so soon. You're not yourself yet.
No, I want to be on my own more than ever now. I can't wait to move in tomorrow. When I'm on my own, I can think of them, speak to them.
Speak to them? Well, you haven't done a séance, have you?
No, Maddie, I just mean in my head, I know they are gone, but sometimes it's more than I can bear.
Come back to the house and rest. I hadn't realised how greatly affected you still are.
Would you like some tea? It might help to calm your nerves before the young ladies come.
Tea? Thank you, Kitty. Come and sit with me. Talk to me.
I'll just get it, madam. It's all ready for you.
I must think of something else. I must occupy my mind so it doesn't run in so many directions, so it can find peace. Is that possible? Oh, my darling Richard. My baby girl.
Here we are, madam. I bought extra cups for when the young ladies come. They'll be here soon. That'll be good, won't it, madam?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Kitty. You've been so kind. I must ask you to distract me. Tell me about when you worked here. Henry's mother said you were here when the Livingstones were in residence.
That's quite right, madam. Oh, what times they were. All the noise and the hubbub. Oh, they were a happy bunch.
Daisy and Charlotte are going to bring some papers and photographs. But please sit down, Kitty. It will do me good to hear of something else, something long past and nothing to do with me.
Well, I was 20 years old when I was here, and it was Mrs. Langley who was the housekeeper, and I worked for her. We didn't live in, there was no room, what with Dr. and Mrs. Livingstone and their 4 children. If I can remember their names. Oh, it's gone. It'll come back to me later.
What were they like? What sorts of things did they do?
Well, he was writing his book, Missionary Travels, something or other I think it was called, but he still found time to go out on the common with the children. I remember a game they used to play, funny it was.
What did they do?
Well, he would hide on the ferns and the brackens on the edge of the common.
I know where you mean.
And then he would call out to the children that he was lost and they would have to go and find him.
How prescient of him, the great explorer. Lost, but on Hadley Common.
That was the joke, you see. That was such a funny joke he made. But then he would jump out and frighten them all, and they'd come running back to the house all muddy, clothes torn, and yours truly would be up all night mending. Sometimes it was so late I had to sleep in the scullery.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it was lovely and warm, and I could hear Dr. and Mrs. Livingstone talking and laughing. They laughed a lot when they were on their own. It was only in company they were quite reserved.
Oh, what was she like? She'd rarely been to England, I think.
Well, she was not a fashionable lady, truth be told. I suppose from spending all that time out in the jungle.
We weren't in the jungle, Kitty. It was more rivers and deserts where they were.
Well, it didn't do her complexion any good, that's all I'll say. Quite weather-beaten, not like the ladies here who were so pale.
I dare say she was quite overwhelmed being back in England with all the attention our husband was getting.
Well, that's why they came here, see? They were in Sloane Street in London, and they couldn't get a minute's peace. People coming up to him all the time, wanted to shake his hand, even in church, climbing over the pews to shake his hand. So they came, when they got the chance, they came here. And that's when Mrs. Penman called, Mr. Henry's mother. She was a young thing then, no hint of the troubles to come.
Troubles?
Oh, madam, I'm sorry I spoke out of turn.
Oh, if you're referring to the loss of her children, then I know of that.
Well, back in those days, it wasn't uncommon to lose 1 or 2, but a wealthy lady with all the advantages to lose 5 babies. Oh, it's heartbreaking. I'm sorry, madam, I'm supposed to be cheering you up.
Oh, please don't worry, Kitty. It's actually a comfort to hear of other people's losses. Oddly, Mrs. Penman and I seem to have a lot in common.
Oh, now leave the young ladies, madam. I'll go and let them in.
Hello, Mrs. Harrington. Hope you're well. Good afternoon, Mrs. Harrington.
Oh dear, how formal you are. I'm determined we should be friends as well as colleagues. Please call me Isabel, if I may call you Daisy and Charlotte.
Suits me. Can't stand all that bowing and scraping. I prefer Charlie, actually, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Isabel. That's very kind.
Nonsense. Now, show me what you have in those folders. Oh, Kitty, please don't leave. Kitty was here when the Livingstones were here. She has so many stories to tell.
How old were you then, and how old are you now?
Mind your own business, you old young lady.
Quite right, Kitty. How impertinent.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend.
Hush, we were teasing you, Charlie, weren't we, Kitty?
Just this once, I'll tell you. I was 20 years old when I was here. You can do the sums yourself.
Please let's sit down. Show me what you have.
Tell me everything.
Well, they came here in 1857, Dr. Livingstone and the family, and they were...
Bothered by the attention, everyone knows that.
They were here. Dr. Livingstone, his wife Mary, and their 4 children, Robert, Agnes, Oswald, and Thomas.
Oswald's a funny name, that, and little Tom. I could have sworn there was another one.
Well, yes, they did have another child, Anna Mary.
No, not her. She came later. Oh, it'll come back to me.
Do you have any pictures, any photographs or paintings?
Well, I got lucky and found this.
So as you can see, Dr. Livingstone, the children, and that's Mary.
What a dress, so much material.
That was her best dress. I worked hard keeping that clean, I can tell you.
But the image isn't very clear. You can't really tell what she looked like.
Oh, look, I do have another one. You can see her much more clearly now.
Ah, so there she is.
This is what Dr. Livingstone wrote about her to a friend. Mine is a matter-of-fact lady, a little thick, black-haired girl, sturdy, and all I want.
Oh, well, we can safely say it wasn't a romantic. Was their marriage arranged?
No, he met her when she was 23, whilst he was recovering from the lion's attack at her father's mission in, Kuruman.
Here's the illustration of the lion attack. It's that one that was in all the newspapers that made him famous. A hero.
He always had trouble with that shoulder. The left one, I recall.
Mary nursed him, and that's how they got together, I suppose. Married in 1843 by her father.
Was she buried alongside him in Westminster Abbey?
No, she died in Africa on Dr. Livingstone's second expedition of a fever at the age of 41. She's buried on the banks of the Zambezi River.
A fever, how terrible.
Apparently Dr. Livingstone cried for 3 days.
Can you imagine the great explorer, the great Victorian crying?
3 days is not such a long time to cry, not really. Show me more. Do you know anything of her parents? What did Mary do in Africa?
Born in 1821, parent missionaries, Robert and Mary Moffat. They were famous before Dr. Livingstone. Mary trained as a teacher.
Did she travel with him?
With Livingstone? Yeah, of course. Twice across the Kalahari Desert, and at least once when she was pregnant.
Goodness, is all that crinoline?
She could have worn the local dress.
Oh, you don't know much about missionaries, do you?
After one trip across the desert, Mary's mother was furious with Dr. Livingstone. The children were thin, covered in mosquito bites, near dying of thirst. Oh, and on the first trip, one of the sons was born in the bush.
My goodness, my admiration for Mary Livingstone gets greater and greater. Interesting to know he didn't get on with his mother-in-law, though, does it anyone?
And Mary's mother really tore into him in one letter, especially after, yes, Lizzie. They had a daughter, Lizzie, who died at 9 weeks.
Mary Livingstone had a daughter called Elizabeth.
Yes, that's right, and after that,
I knew there was another one.
Oh, the child died in Africa, was buried there, I suppose.
Yes, and I'm so sorry. I should have told you that bit.
It's fine, Daisy. What were we saying earlier, Kitty? Quite a frequent occurrence in those days. So another woman I have something in common with.
Do you want me to stop?
No.
Well, maybe just a little longer, madam. You didn't sleep very well last night.
A few more facts from your notes.
Very well. She spoke several native languages. Isn't that something?
That is remarkable. My French is terrible. Thank goodness everywhere speaks English.
And after Lizzie, in 1842, Dr. Livingstone sent Mary and the children back to Britain to keep them safe. They first stayed at Dr. Livingstone's sister's in Scotland.
Oh, let's just call him David. Dr. Livingstone is far too long, and it's not like he's in the room.
You have no respect.
I have respect for people who deserve my respect.
You don't think he did, that he still does?
Well, it depends what you think about what's happening in Africa right now. He may have gone with good intentions, but all he did was open up the place for the men who came after to exploit the land and the people. Look what's happening with all the mining. Look at all that wealth. It's not for the Africans, is it? And don't get me started on the conditions.
Charlotte!
You know it's true. They kept those workers like slaves in compounds. And there was that terrible accident. Where was it now? Hundreds of people died, and not one of the board members felt sorry.
You're wrong. My husband was a board member and an investor in that company, and he was very sorry.
But you're wrong. It wasn't hundreds that died, just a few men who were careless with their safety.
Is that what he told you?
Well, perhaps that is enough for this evening.
Yes, come along, ladies. Mrs. Harrington needs her rest.
Do you need me tomorrow, Mrs. Harrington?
Yes, of course, Daisy.
And shall I return, or would you rather I did?
You can come back, Charlie. There must be something in these papers, Richard, about the accident. Charlotte is so passionate about her views, but I'm sure prone to exaggeration. Where is it? I can't look now. Music. Loud music.
Good evening, Mrs. Harrington.
Oh, well, now I know I'm going mad with grief. I've conjured Mary Livingstone. I just hope everything that I talk about appears before me. But she's still there. What was I reading in Dr. Freud about dreams and wish fulfillment? The mind is a powerful instrument. Good evening. Mary Livingstone, I presume.
I do hope you're enjoying your stay here. No. We were so happy when we were here with my David and the wee ones.
No, I can't, I won't. Richard always told you your imagination was too vivid. Here's the proof. She's appeared here every night after Daisy and Charlotte have been here, after you've talked about her life. Isabel, this is a clear case of dream, wish fulfillment, projection. Oh, is this grief driving me mad? Am I some modern day Ophelia?
I was born in Africa.
Born in Africa? I didn't know she was born in Africa, or did I?
You won't find a lot of details about me in those papers, or any others.
Daisy said it was hard to find mentions of her, or her letter. Mary Livingstone surely wrote letters.
I did, many, many letters. But the correspondence of the mere wife of one of Britain's greatest Victorians is not so worthy of preservation.
Why do I know and yet not know that she was born in Africa? She did speak the local language after all.
I knew several local languages. In Kuruman, I mainly spoke Swetsana.
Kuruman, where you met and married David Livingstone.
That was the most remote mission station in southern Africa. Until David, of course, established one even more remote. I was 23, and it was an acceptable arrangement. Neither of us could be called romantic. We talked. He said we could work together. Strange to think that he was just about to write off to a church magazine to advertise for a wife. So, I suppose I saved him the cost of a postage stamp.
Was that after the lion attack?
Oh, he did have a nasty wound. And I adjusted all his coats to make him more comfortable. But my clothes were made of stout cotton, because you can't cross a desert wearing crinoline. They didn't look quite right in London, and that was made very clear to me.
Were you happy with him there?
Oh, happy? I wasn't happy when he sent me with the children to stay in Scotland. But when we were here, yes, I was happy. This is a good house.
I believe, I hope, I might start to feel content here. It's so peaceful. Too peaceful without Philip. That's why my projects will engage me. But it does take me back to Richard and the children, to Africa. We never did make that mission, out on an expedition. We talked about it, but, well, we thought we had time. It must have been wonderful to have been out there together in such a beautiful place.
It was the most glorious place on earth, but it's sometimes harder than I could ever imagine. There's a painting, Alfred Ryder, and if you squint, you could almost think you're seeing a respectable Victorian family on a day out at the sea,
But my dress smelt, it was faded, it was torn, my bonnet didn't keep off the mosquitoes. Oh, and my children's skin, every square inch was covered in mosquito bites.
The wife of a missionary, a famous missionary.
Oh, he wasn't famous then. In David's early days, my mother and father were better known. Even I was known and respected locally.
The children, can I remember their names? Robert, Agnes.
Nanny, she loved to be called Nanny.
Then Thomas.
Oh, Tom. David called him Tau, which is Setswana for lion.
And then Lizzie. We called our Elizabeth Libby. It was Philip's name for her, really. What were we thinking, taking them out there? We were so selfish. Richard was so selfish. He insisted they come. Wanted to show them off, he said. The perfect English family.
Oh, all my children were affected in some way by decisions David made. When we lost our Lizzie, I wrote to my family and I said, David is blind to our suffering, but I don't suppose they'd kept those letters.
Oh, no one likes to be told they're wrong. If Richard had lived, I would have told him. I would have screamed at him. After Lizzie, you had some sort of illness, a seizure.
Oh, my face was frozen, it had fallen. I recovered, but it still stiffened at times when I was anxious.
Is that why you so rarely seem to smile?
At times you could say that, but others, I simply had nothing to smile about.
I cannot imagine the life of a missionary, all that saving souls and praying and singing hymns.
My singing was terrible. And yes, there were prayers because we were sincere about our faith. From one day to the next, we didn't know if 5 or 50 children would attend the school. And in honesty, they only came for the food and the medical care when David was there. But there was no great saving of souls. I think in all of his time, David only ever converted one person to Christianity.
One soul? Why keep going?
Oh, because we saw things that made us absolutely certain we were in the right place and there was work to do. There is nothing more wonderful than feeling passionate about something that you know desperately needs to be done.
I do feel more alive when I think about all my plans, the things I want to do, my causes, to improve the lives of women and children, make them less tied to the whims of their husbands and fathers.
Oh, are things better for women now?
Too many things are the same. Some things are better. But we're surely making progress on votes for women and financial independence.
And these things haven't happened yet.
So much work to do, but the Livingstones, they wanted to change things, not just spread Christianity. What things?
Slavery, of course, David called it.
A scourge on humanity.
Oh, people didn't realise. They thought because slavery was abolished in Britain that it just didn't exist.
Africans were still being taken as slaves.
Oh, David wanted to open up Africa to show people just how beautiful the country is, how wonderful the people are, and new trade routes could bring wealth to all.
Open up Africa to people like my husband and his enterprise.
Oh, and what was your husband doing in Africa? Because you seem to know an awful lot about mine.
Well, Richard was no missionary. He was an investor, a board member in a mining company. He was a financier. He made sure the money was in place to keep the profits coming in, but there's something here that explains it better.
But how did you like the people?
Oh, well, some of Richard's colleagues became good friends. Others were awful, just appalling.
I do mean the people, the Africans.
We always met the same kind of people, the same people.
Oh, but the African people, they have such wonderful traditions and music and stories.
When I think about it, we never actually met any Africans to speak to. I don't think Richard did either. That's strange. He visited the mines underground, but everyone was there underground or in compounds. They sound dreadful. Why would Richard?
What was it Charlotte said about David travelling to Africa with good intentions? Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
For heaven's sake, where is that damn carriage?
You were invited to tea, Henry. Why did you have to ask her again? She has said no quite clearly and several times. She does not want to delegate her affairs to you and Robertson.
But Robertson has some marvellous business opportunities lined up. She could double her money if she let us do it.
Double her money? Henry, she has so much money. She has no need to speculate. She has told you her plans. To manage the money herself. Some charitable donations. A trust fund for something or other. One of her causes.
Her causes. Fabians and feathers. Ha!
You mean mock, Henry? You certainly did. But Isabel sees the world differently from you. She wants to change it, and for everyone, not just a select few.
I suppose she's been talking to you about this votes for women nonsense.
Do you really think it's nonsense, Henry? Really? That adult women in this country should not have a say in how it's governed?
Oh, Lord, she has been talking to you. You know that Robertson has some compelling evidence that a fixation on vegetarianism, saving the ostrich, and women's suffrage are signs of mental derangement.
And if you share that evidence with Isabel, she will find herself a new solicitor and tell me to find myself a new husband. Henry, she just needs a purpose in life, particularly now with Philip away at school. She is grieving. Her world has been turned upside down. Her projects and causes give her something to occupy her mind. And yes, my life would be rather easier if her causes were somewhat more conventional.
Oh, easier for everyone.
I was thinking, Henry, your committee, the Livingstone thing, might she join that? She has done so much research on Mary and David Livingstone. She'd share that with you if you asked. I'm sure she'd be a great advocate for all the events. And she might contribute some funds.
Well, it is a worthy committee and her support would be welcome. I suppose she does live in Livingstone Cottage.
There. What a good idea you had, Henry.
Madam, I thought you had a visitor. I must be hearing things. I wondered if you wanted a cup of tea or one of Mr. Shepherd's pies again.
Thank you, Kitty. Tea would be very welcome, but no pie. Come on. It must have been a relief when your husband sent you and the 4 children back to Britain. Surely it was to keep them safe.
David decided that I should return with the children because he felt it would restore our health and eliminate the possibility of my becoming pregnant again, which we seem to manage all too easily.
Your mother could see that you and the children had suffered so much.
Oh, my mother and David. Does anyone get on with their mother-in-law? My mother felt that David didn't care enough about my health and comfort. But it wasn't that he didn't care. He actually became impatient with people when they fell ill. He was the same with everyone. So we went to a place that everyone, apart from us, called home, with his family in Scotland. And they were disappointed in me because I was not prepared to be paraded around as the wife of Dr. Livingstone, and they didn't like that I drank more than they thought was proper. Did that rumour get around?
Rumours of your drinking, that would have hurt.
I was lonely and it helped me forget.
I can understand that, wanting to push things out of your mind.
Oh, I had enough and decided to leave. I upped with the children and left Hamilton. Oh, they were so cross with me. They wrote to David about me. So he came south and we stayed in a little village outside London.
Hackney?
Yes, it was so rural and so peaceful. But we were always so poor. I wrote begging letters to the London Missionary Society asking for advances on David's salary. I had no idea how to manage money in England. I was once charged £10 for a small bag of laundry.
Oh, you had no friends who could offer help or support.
Oh, the Braithwaites, they were wonderful. They took us to Kendal, and in the peace of the Lake District, with friends who did not judge me, I started to heal.
But did he write letters?
He wrote letters, but they were mostly factual. And my letters to him, well, I don't know if he got them, and any request for help was always too late.
So you must have read reports about him in the newspapers.
Oh, there were always reports about him in the newspapers. A lion attack, of course. And then he found Victoria Falls, and everything was called Victoria, even though it had a far more poetic name of its own. Musai Oye Tonya, the smoke that thunders. That's another famous painting.
Thomas Haynes, I think. But it must have been a wonderful moment when you were reunited.
Yes, if you were in Dover, but I was in Southampton. Oh. No one had informed me of the change. It wasn't until another 3 days later that we actually met.
We have the tea here, madam.
Oh, Kitty, you put out 2 cups there.
Well, I just thought perhaps...
Go on, say it.
Well, I wondered if you wanted me to sit with you like the other night, you know, bit of company like.
Oh, thank you, Kitty. That's very kind, but tonight I'd like to be by myself.
Well, I could talk about the Livingstones again, or you could read me that letter from Master Philip.
That's very kind, but you've had a busy day. I mustn't tire you out.
Well, thank you very much, madam. It has been rather busy. I bumped into that Frida Shepherd, you know, the butcher's daughter, with all her talk about what they're going to do for the Livingstone Committee. Honestly, to hear her, you'd think Dr. Livingstone had invented the steak pie, not a great river found. Anyway, madam, I'll leave you now, but I think don't be too late, madam. You know, your sister says I've got to make sure you sleep.
Where was I? We were in London. David was writing up his travels. He had a book offer and the advance was very welcome. And he had invitations to so many places. He said, oh, I don't like them. But I think he did rather like them, well, certainly more than I did. And he was even presented to the Queen.
You must have accompanied him to the palace. There must be a court report.
No, I was not there. I didn't have the costume. I didn't have the silk hats and dresses. So he attended on his own.
And then you all moved to Hadley Green.
Oh, Hadley Common, we loved it there. We played games every day. I felt calm, almost serene. David was managing the family money. He was hopeful of funds for another expedition. He was getting to know our children. And we were getting to know each other again. Indeed, we found ourselves expecting another baby. But sadly, we lost this one, which was not uncommon.
But he was already planning to go out again the next year and for you to go with him.
Oh, well, that was the plan. And I would like to believe that it was because he thought he would be miserable without me, but actually there was a more practical motive, because I could work in Africa. I could translate for him. On the journey out, we did discover that I was expecting another baby. Anna Mary was born in Kuruman. All my children born in Africa, but a little baby wasn't part of the plan. So he sent me back. But this time we had our own place in Glasgow and Robert was to go to medical school.
Oh, Philip talks of studying medicine. I think he wishes he could have done more for Libby. I certainly do not want him following him in his father's footsteps. Not now I know more about mining. Definitely not. So, settled in Scotland for a few years, and then called back out to Africa again. You were at his beck and call. Who was that you wrote to? So the orders have come.
My dear friend Mary Fitch. Now, she would not have destroyed my correspondence. I got the letter from David saying, embrace the first opportunity to come out. I considered rebelling. I was not that ideal missionary wife who was stoic, strong and dutiful. Indeed, left on my own with just the children and nothing meaningful to do, I was
prone to unwarranted despair.
Oh, people thought, oh, David's a doctor. He can cure me of my melancholy.
But he wasn't the right kind of doctor. You didn't have a broken arm or a nasty cut.
So I think he thought I was less bother out there. So I went without my children. Why did you go with your husband to Africa, and why did you take your children?
Why did Richard want us there? I wanted to be there to support him. I didn't want him to grow apart from the children. I wanted him to be a father to them.
And that was one of David's greatest regrets, because he never got to know his children.
There's a photograph. Who is that? He's looking at her so lovingly.
It's Anna Mary. She'd never really met him. I can't imagine what she was thinking.
And what do you want people to remember of you, Mary Livingstone? It seems you're a footnote to his life.
Oh, well, I don't wish to appear vain, but I do believe that my considerations and opinions on African life, African people, the landscape, the traditions, have as much merit as David's.
I'm deserving of as much recognition. Do you know they're planning all these memorial events to commemorate his birth, even a stone to be placed on the front of this house? But when you went out there, leaving the children behind, you must have worried that you might not see them again. And then you did die, a terrible death. I begin to hate that man. How can you talk about him with warmth and affection when all he clearly cared about was his own ambition, thoughtless and cruel?
Are you talking about my husband or your own? When I died, David cried for days. And if you want to rail against any man's treatment of me, may I suggest Dr. John Kirk? He was at the camp when I died, and he called me
a coarse, vulgar woman cut out for rough work.
Yes, fat, and what was the phrase?
A queer piece of furniture. Outrageous comments.
You know, I do believe that that man would sooner go without laundry and hot food than see me without my corset and my sleeves rolled up.
What do men want of us?
Oh, pleased to see you.
Isabel, what are you doing? I thought I heard you talking to Daisy.
Hello, Madeline. Just me and my imagination.
Don't let Henry know you have one of those. Is this your Mary Livingstone project? Well, it certainly looks more interesting than boring legal papers. But you'll have Henry and that dreadful Robertson fussing.
Richard's papers are so complicated. Not the money, the other papers, his work correspondence and briefings. Some of it is so...
Is it hard to understand?
No, in a way. It's hard to understand some of the decisions his company made, some of the ways they talk about people. I don't understand how they could treat human beings like that. Did you know they kept them in compounds away from their families?
But wasn't that normal? Surely it was safer?
It's not normal here, is it? I don't recognise the company, Richard, as my darling, loving, supportive, even radical Richard. Did he share my views at all? Was it all just a show?
Oh, Isabel.
Come, Madeline, come and sit with me. I will tell you something that will make you laugh.
Oh, good. Is it about Henry?
I've been spending my time talking to Mary Livingstone. What do you think about that?
Mary Livingstone? I don't understand. What do you mean?
Well, it's just all this research, the project, is making my mind work overtime, and I've conjured her up, and I spend my time talking to her, talking about the things I've learnt about her, and things I've learnt about myself and Richard.
Talking to her? What do you mean? You mean you're reading her letters out loud? Something like that?
Well, that's part of it. But I told you, Dr. Freud said...
I know that the mind is a powerful thing, but... Well, you mean you dreamt it? You have been dreadfully tired, and perhaps a little too much wine? Why did you say this would make me laugh, Belle? It's not funny.
Oh, Maddie, you are my sister, and you must understand.
This is not a sister thing. It's not funny. All this talk, and everyone can see that you're overtired and you're still grieving. One doesn't need Dr. Freud to tell us that. And all these papers that Daisy's bringing, filling your head and confusing you. I will speak to Daisy myself. If she is to help, it must be in filing Richard's papers, not this.
Oh, stop it, Maddie. You sound like Richard or Henry. I mean, Henry or Robertson. You...
Well, maybe they're right. Maybe they should do more of the administration, and you should take a holiday.
And listen to yourself, Madeline. I'm not going anywhere, and I will not allow Henry and Robertson to manage my affairs. If I allowed them, they would just take over. Oh, sorry, Maddie. I didn't mean to scare you. You must understand, immersing myself in all of this, it's stopping my worst thoughts about Richard and Elizabeth. My Mary Livingstone project has really helped. I'm starting to see I could be happy again. Can you understand that?
Of course, Belle, but you must stop all this fancy. It's frightening. Can you do that? Can you stop?
No, Henry, I will not sign, and I don't know why you persist in asking, or why you're here this late in the evening. And Robertson, I was under the impression you were in my employ and bound by my instructions.
You tried, Robertson. I'm getting nowhere with her.
We've tried to explain, Mrs. Harrington, that we are willing and think it best that the responsibility for your assets is best managed by both me and your brother-in-law, as we have your best interests at heart. In particular, while you are, to be frank, in a delicate state of mind.
What state of mind do you mean, Robertson? My widowhood? That is not a state of mind, it is a statement of fact. My husband left me as sole beneficiary and executor of his will. Is that not so?
Technically, yes, but he can't have anticipated the current circumstances.
Current circumstances? I'm at a loss to understand. You both make no sense. Henry, are you talking about my charitable donations? I'm aware we disagree politically, but you'll just have to manage your own state of mind about that.
Isabel, my dear sister-in-law, although you and I disagree, you know that Madeline and I care deeply about you and your health.
Do not speak to me in that tone, Henry. I'm not Madeline, and I won't listen to this nonsense.
Would you listen to me, Mrs. Harrington?
I'm sorry, Dr.
Burrows.
Dr. Burrows, as you can see, I am quite well. Henry, were you concerned about Kitty's health?
I'm not here to see a servant.
Then you are here to see me. Where do you practice, Dr. Burrows? Are you local?
My place of work is not far from here. I'm head physician at a hospital in Friern, Barnet.
Friern, Barnet? There is no hospital in Friern, Barnet. Unless you mean Colney Hatch.
Yes, Colney Hatch Asylum.
Henry, what have you been saying to me about Dr. Burrows that would make him think that he should come and speak to me?
May I ask you, Mrs. Harrington, to name everyone in this room?
I beg your pardon.
A simple question. Who is in this room?
Very well. You, me, Mr. Robertson, and my brother-in-law, Henry Penman.
Captain Henry Penman.
No one else?
Of course, Kitty is here in the corner.
No, not a servant. No other lady. For example, Mary Livingstone is not here talking to you?
Mary Livingstone? Mary Livingstone? Of course not. She used to live here a long time ago, but Mary Livingstone is dead.
Yes, you've been making quite a project of her life, haven't you? Finding out all you can.
I have taken an interest, yes, a little distraction. I'm interested in the lives of great women and men.
Isabel, Madeline has told us that you believe that you talk to Mary Livingstone right here in this room, in this house. Do you deny it?
Madeline told you? Madeline?
It is quite obvious that you are losing your mind. Affected by grief, no doubt, is perfectly understandable, but the fact remains you are not capable of managing your affairs.
No. Oh, I see what has happened here. Talking to Mary Livingstone, what a silly thing. That was a joke. Madeline is my little sister. Henry, you know how I like to tease my little sister, and I was setting up a prank. Quite ridiculous now, I see. Madeline told you.
A joke?
Kitty.
Yes, sir.
Kitty, fetch Mrs. Penman. We'll see what sort of joke this is. Get to the facts.
Yes, sir, madam. Careful there, Kitty. Where's the fire?
Hello, Mrs. Harrington, Isabel. Oh, gentlemen.
Do you hear? Called her Isabel.
Yes, I heard.
Daisy, thank goodness you're here. Perhaps you can help. These gentlemen seem to think that I'm what's a word you would use, Doctor, becoming obsessed or fixated with Mary Livingstone, and that it's affecting the balance of my mind.
You have a project. You're interested in all people who've lived in this house before.
Daisy.
She is Miss Blaine.
No, quite right, Miss Blaine. Miss Blaine, a report has reached these gentlemen that she believes she speaks with Mrs. Mary Livingstone in the evenings.
No. Sometimes her sister is here, and she talks to me and Charlotte.
Charlotte Paxton, I told you about her.
Very strong evidence. Right there.
No, not you or Miss Paxton.
But this is preposterous. I will not have you question my secretary like
Mrs.
this.
Harrington, we should tell you that we've also been told by another witness that you regularly talk to yourself when you're alone. That a second voice is heard. Clearly you adopting the persona of your guest. In this case, Mrs. Mary Livingstone.
Who said such a thing?
It was Etta, when she helps Kitty. She came to me afraid that there were ghosts in the house. I got the whole tale out of her. Well, what with that and what Madeline told me, you see why I had to act.
He had to act. We all did.
Mrs. Harrington, listen to me. I have some expertise in the hysterical ailments of women, and I have had great success with my water treatment for disorders like yours. I would like you to come stay with me. The accommodation is of a very high standard.
Just signing this before you leave.
No! Wait! It's my fault. I'm the one obsessed with Mary Livingstone. It's my fault. I'll stop. I'll take it all away. It's my fault.
Daisy, you know you don't need to do this.
I see, young lady. Well, your brother shall hear of your behaviour. This is most disappointing. You will leave and don't expect any references.
Off you go, girl.
It appears we have found the source of the problem. I still believe the resolution lies with me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've been a silly, foolish woman. I'm sorry.
Just sign it. It's all for the best.
Sign it.
Oh, sign it.
Mrs.
Kitty, what is my mother doing here?
You said Mrs. Penman. I thought you might be.
Kitty has told me the most extraordinary tale. Quite fantastic. Will one of you gentlemen please tell me what has been going on here?
Mother, we are here to help Isabel.
We are concerned she may lose all her monies in impulsive actions.
She is unwell. She is seeing things.
Oh, seeing things. Well, what I see are 3 men in a lady's sitting room, and not one of you sits while the lady sits. You must be the doctor. Coney Hatch, Kitty said.
Yes, Dr. Burrows of Colney Hatch.
Are you aware, Dr. Burrows, that I have recently been asked to join the board of the Coney Hatch Lunatic Asylum as a trustee?
Have you?
Yes. And so I know that Coney Hatch does not take female patients. Am I mistaken?
No, but Captain Penman simply wanted an opinion at this stage. I saw no issue.
Henry, I am most disappointed in you. I believe you brought Dr. Burrows here to bully Isabel into acting against her interests.
What? Well, I've never heard such... Mother, I'm disappointed in you!
Just like you were in school. And you, Robertson, what is your part in all this?
Mrs. Penman, I can assure you, I simply wish to ensure that Mrs. Harrington does not, through lack of attention, find that she's lost some or all of her monies. She is grieving, and it is well documented that those who've lost a life partner, especially in tragic circumstances, are usually prone to melancholy, delusion and impulsiveness.
And do you give this medical information to the widowers amongst your clientele? To the men who have lost their life partners? No. So your attention is solely for the women who find themselves bereaved and at your mercy. Shame on you. Right, out of this house, everyone. Off you go. I will tend to Isabel. Kitty will see you gentlemen out.
Oh, Caroline, thank you, thank you.
Oh, hush now, hush. I knew Robertson's father, a weasel just like his son. But, Isabel, get a new solicitor. I'll keep Henry at bay. But you must be more careful. You have had a very, very narrow escape. Richard left you his money, but people don't like women with their own money. It means they're independent, and that is what they fear. And fear makes men do strange things. Get a more conventional hobby. Look, join Henry's Livingstone Committee and put all that to good use.
But you're not going to ask me if what they say is true. I'm sure Kitty's told you that I think I'm talking to Mary Livingstone.
What good would it be for me to know that? If you find the conversation stimulating and you can promise me that you will try to depend on them less, I see no harm.
It's just at the moment I find it comforting to talk out loud. I suppose it clears my head in a way.
Yes, just like I felt when I went sea bathing after Matthew died. And besides, from what I remember of Mary Livingstone, she was quick-witted, with an inquiring mind, and a care for her fellow man. Much like yourself, Isabel. Now, get some rest. Good evening.
You have caused me a lot of trouble.
Have I?
Yes, I must be a good girl now, and you are not part of that.
Do you remember when you said to me that things are so much better for women now than they were in my day? A woman had more independence.
So much for wish fulfillment.
She's already been invited. She'll be on her way. You did invite her, don't you recall?
Yes, but I can't think why I did it. Still, at least she seems a bit more compliant now. Less talk of her views. Bit of a shame that she's still not on speaking terms with Madeline, but who understands the female mind, eh? And at least we cleared up that unfortunate business with your sister.
Yes, again, Captain Penman, my apologies. My sister misunderstood what was asked of her in her enthusiasm.
Yes, well, at least she's back working for Mrs. Harrington now, but I hope you're keeping a tight rein on her.
She's filing your late brother-in-law's papers and nothing more.
And we can't put Mrs. Harrington off?
She is making a rather large donation to fund the project. We have no other such generous benefactors, unless you yourself might care to.
Yes, well, we'll just have to make the best of it, won't we? Oh, and don't go taking any minutes of her comments, Blaine. It would just be a waste of ink, eh?
Very good, sir.
Oh, and sit her away from me so I don't have to hear her whittering on.
Why?
Good evening, Henry.
Isabel, I didn't see you arrive.
Perhaps you didn't recognise me in my new hat. It's quite plain. No feathers, you see.
And, Miss Blaine, I wasn't expecting to see you here this evening.
She has accompanied me, Henry.
Indeed. Would you like to sit in the vestibule, Daisy? I'm sure Mrs. Harrington won't be staying very long.
Miss Blaine will sit by me and take notes. Her shorthand is quite remarkable.
My dear Isabel, we have Blaine here for that, to act as secretary. He will record all the minutes and compile all the notes.
So hard to remember all I need to. You will understand, of course, Henry, that I need my own little aide-memoire to assist my poor foggy brain.
Yes, of course. Miss Blaine is welcome to stay and assist you in any way she can.
Thank you, Henry. Just here, please, Daisy.
I do hope she isn't going to make a fuss. She put you and me in quite a pickle.
She's not here to cause a fuss, Teddy.
We'll see.
Charlotte Paxton, Finchley Gazette, here to cover the meeting.
Oh, where's Saunders? He's the reporter chap who usually covers our meetings, Blaine.
Touch of gout. Handed the work to me. I'll be your chappie for this evening.
There aren't enough seats, Miss Paxton.
Fine. I prefer to stand, Captain.
How many women have been invited to this blessed meeting, Blaine?
You must sit down straight away, sister. It was a long walk from the carriage.
Stop fussing, Violet. Mrs. Harrington, how good to see you out and about. I heard that you were ill or resting. Is it not too soon? My dear. What has happened to your hat? Have you been attacked? Was it used? Did they wrench the feathers from you? Dreadful, how dreadful, sister. We are no longer safe in Hadley Green.
That is not why she has been.
Miss Framley, I'm quite unharmed. I've chosen to stop wearing ostrich feathers and meaning to highlight the plight of these beautiful creatures. Their numbers are dwindling and they may soon become extinct if we keep murdering them simply to adorn ladies' heads.
Terrible, terrible. Sister, we must put in a large order immediately. We don't want to have naked hats.
That is not why she has no feathers. It is a protest. Is that the word, Mrs. Harrington?
Yes, Miss Violet, a protest. Daisy, do we have any of those leaflets, murderous millinery? It's about the plumage bill. You must write to your member of Parliament.
Do we just a leaflet about the plumage bill, sir? All quite proper.
Preposterous view, but harmless, I suppose. The Fur and Feathers Brigade. Save the off.
Hello.
Good evening, ladies.
Right. Gentlemen and ladies, shall we begin? The 8th meeting of the David Livingstone Commemoration Committee is called. And as we know, there are several events planned in the Hadley Green and Chipping Barnet area to commemorate the centenary of the birth of one of this country's greatest sons, the missionary and explorer, David Livingstone.
And anti-slavery campaigner.
Sorry, did you say something, Mrs. Harrington?
Anti-slavery, abolitionism. Dr. Livingstone, in addition to being a missionary, was a fierce opponent of slavery. He encountered it on his travels, and its elimination from the continent of Africa became one of his most important objectives.
Yes, but he is primarily known as a great explorer.
And missionary.
He believed the plains of the interior would be transformed into cotton and sugar plantations, as in the Americas, and that the prosperity would drive out slavery.
Was he aware that those plantations were built on slavery?
There's no slavery anymore, is there?
Only in my shop, according to my heritage.
Thank you, everyone. We are straying from the agenda a little, and there is a lot to get through. Topics for the series of talks. The food stalls. A David Livingstone look-alike contest suggested by the Framley sisters. A series of musical offerings, a service of thanksgiving, and finally the wording of the memorial stone to be erected on the dwelling on Hadley Green Road, now known locally as Livingstone Cottage.
Oh, this is going to be intolerable, Daisy. Remind me why we are here.
You promised Mrs. Penman and your sister that you'll take up some more conventional hobbies.
I'm sure I've paid my penance by now. I have a new solicitor. Henry hasn't asked about Richard's assets in months now. I'm sure I'm safe, and I'm only really interested in the last item on the agenda. Perhaps we could find some reason to leave the meeting for a few minutes.
Leave it to me. Do you need to get some air, Mrs. Harrington? I think you do.
Oh, thank you, Daisy. If Captain Penman will allow, just for a moment.
Of course, take as long as you need.
Oh, go with her, sister, and tell me anything interesting when you get back.
Of course. I could help. Please, let me help.
Well, thank you, Daisy. That was quite a performance.
You want to tell? Oh. Oh, you wanted to leave the meeting. How clever. I must try that.
I'm so glad Charlotte is here. I want to set a date for a family photograph.
Are you speaking of Charlotte Paxton? The lady reporter inside. How thrilling. Is she really a suffragette?
Oh, really, Miss Violet? If she were, and we knew and we told you, why, we might be putting you in danger.
But, Mrs. Harrington, why is asking for votes so dangerous? I know I have not had a great deal of education, but I do read the newspapers. Although there are many arguments against the proposal, I've not read one that makes sense to me.
Ah, well said. Daisy, perhaps you and Charlotte could provide Miss Violet with some more enlightening reading material than the local newspaper. I think she would enjoy it.
Just don't tell your sisters from me.
Never. Deeds, not words.
We're on to the last item.
Now, I've had tentative discussions with many of you on this committee, and I believe that we can all agree on David Livingstone, missionary and explorer, lived here in 1857.
And Mary.
I beg your pardon. Did you speak again, Mrs. Harrington?
Mary Livingstone. The stone should read, Dr. David Livingstone and his wife Mary lived here.
You want us to add his wife's name to the stone? But, my dear Mrs. Harrington, whatever for? The memorial stone and other events are to commemorate Dr. Livingstone's achievements during his lifetime. Being married is, I'm afraid, not an achievement worthy of such note.
I'm sure other committee members will know that Mary Moffat, as was integral to Dr. Livingstone's achievements. In fact, the very fact that he was married to Mary Moffat facilitated his initial work. For a while, he was known as the husband of Mary Moffat.
Was he? By Jove. Sometimes people call me Frida's father. In jest, of course.
Well, I didn't know his wife's name was Mary. That's my late wife's name, don't you know?
Moffat, yes. Her father was Robert Moffat. He was in Africa long before Livingstone, was he not?
So the stone should read, Dr. David Livingstone, missionary and explorer, and his wife lived here.
Always liked the name Mary.
Recognition of a missionary heritage.
If she did as much as you say she did, Mrs. Harrington.
Indeed, she can't be left out.
She shouldn't be. That's exactly what I think.
What did they take with them to eat on these expeditions?
Gentlemen and ladies, the memorial stone and other events are to commemorate Dr. Livingstone's birth 100 years ago, unless Mrs. Harrington is now to inform us that Mary Livingstone and her husband shared a birthday. I am afraid we must stay with Dr. Livingstone alone. Now, shall we move to vote? Ladies, as this practice will be strange to you...
Voting is indeed a foreign practice to the women in this room.
Oh, we are looking forward to exercising our vote, aren't we, sister? Have we won?
Oh, don't tell my daughter.
Not real votes. Only in this room.
Knew this was a bad idea. Now, in the traditional manner, if you agree with the proposal for the wording, Dr. Livingstone, missionary and explorer, lived here in 1857, will you now please raise your hand?
Ladies, what a wonderful brass band.
Sounded like tubas in the moonlight.
I've always loved a French horn.
Isabel, was it your doing? Did you fix it?
I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, come on, out of the blue, the Finchley Gazette have asked me to take the photographs for the big Livingstone event.
Well, it is taking place in front of my house, and I think I'm entitled to say over who takes photographs of my home.
Oh, well, however you do it, thank you. You know, I won't get any credit for it in the newspaper. No surprise there. But this is such a big chance for me.
Oh, well, you deserve it. That photograph you took of Philip and me, you captured us perfectly. And I hear you are thinking about a book about Mary Livingstone.
Perhaps. But I'm not sure if there's much interest in writing a book about women whose lives were hidden by their famous husbands.
Well, I would certainly buy it. Oh, excuse me, I'm just going to talk to the families for a minute.
Daisy, how's it going to work? It seems so risky going into business together, the two of us.
Up the money from our savings. We work well together. Unless you think I can't do it, I'll let you down.
Oh no, Daisy, never let me down. You're much more talented than me, much more capable as a clerk. And I think if you set your mind to setting up a secretarial business, it would be a great success. It's not you. I think I would let you down.
Oh, you idiot, Teddy. You'll be marvellous. Come on, big brother, we've got plans to make.
Thank you for trying.
Oh, we didn't win, though.
Oh, it would have been nice to see my name beside David's. Another time, perhaps.
I can't talk to you anymore.
You cannot talk to me. You must talk to Madeline now.
Now, gather round, everyone. We are about to begin. Reverend Parent, to the front, please.
Me? Oh, yes, of course.
Right, everyone, look this way.
My, a book. Maybe at some point in the future, someone will write about me.
This way.
In some versions, I will be seen as the missionary wife, noble, silent and suffering.
Everyone to me.
In others, I will be seen as the woman who burdened the great man with children and her behaviours and illnesses.
Eyes open.
Which version do I prefer? Which is right? The only story of my life that will satisfy me is if I could write it myself.
And hold.
To me. My name's Claire Fisher. I wrote and directed this play. So we really want to thank Susie and David Earnshaw, the Bull Theatre, because they have supported us. They provide us with this amazing space to rehearse and to perform in. And of course to Joseph and Rue, who've been up in the box doing all the technical work. We thank you so much for all that trust and support. I do really want to thank, and we all do, our wonderful artistic director, Siobhan Dunn. She has been the mainstay of this group, and without her, I would not have been encouraged to write this play. We would not have had the support and the challenge, and lent heavily on all her expertise. She has been a real inspiration to us all. Cast and crew, we haven't got here tonight, but Paws, who is our set designer, who from cardboard made the amazing gramophone of data and the lamppost, and it creates all sorts of wonderful stuff for us and devotes his time to us. And of course our cast, who all have day jobs and better things to do, but they come along and they work hard and learn lines and take direction and listen and add their own ideas and add ideas for characters and lines and ideas. So they have been absolutely wonderful, and of course we couldn't be here if they weren't on the stage with us. I want to thank you for coming along to support amateur community theatre, so coming along to your local high street to come to see a show and to take that time and to invest us with that trust and support. If you, God, my mouth's going dry now. If you liked what you saw, and you thought, oh, I could do that, or they do need a bit of help shifting seats, I'll probably take anything, please get in touch with us. The email address is on the programme, or you can talk to us in the pub afterwards. But we would love to see you here. Our ethos is that anyone can have a go. Devising this play meant that we could add characters in as people wanted to become involved. So if you want to become involved, particularly backstage, please come and see us. But thank you very much for coming to see us this evening. Thank you.